Welcome to the China Report with your host, Joshua Phillip.
Then December, people started seeing something a little more serious. And that was, of course, when people started getting arrested for writing about it online. And then later, of course, late December, the Chinese Communist Party somewhat acknowledged it.
Yeah.
Although, initially they said it wasn't contagious, they said these types of things, and so people were not showing the type of caution that they should have in order to contain it. I understand that there's been videos also saying that people who die from the virus, the bodies are not being disposed of. Could you tell me about what's been going on with that?
Yeah, so these videos are hard to verify, and they often get deleted very soon after they've been published, but we have seen footage like inside medical facilities where we see what look like corpses like just in the hallways of hospitals and just sitting there. And then recently also on social media, the Wuhan authorities actually made a post saying right now funeral homes in the city can help dispose of bodies that have died due to the coronavirus for free.
They can't help?
They can help, but I think this kind of indicates the scale of the outbreak. If they're saying the entire city's funeral homes can take in the corpses and like take care of the cremation or other services, I think it shows the scale of the outbreak and how many people are actually dying from it.
Interesting. And I think we should step back one step because some people might not understand how the Chinese internet is different from the internet we know in the West. Of course, they have the Great Firewall. They have, that censors the internet. They have the 50-cent army, which is individuals they hire to, make propaganda posts and get paid per post. They have Chinese agents who monitor it. They have AI systems that detect keywords and remove content. I mean, you name it. They have all kinds of stuff. And when you're in a country where information is being suppressed on things like even, Tiananmen Square massacre or anything that goes against the Communist Party narrative, and all narratives are being controlled by centralized and controlled outlets. People, don't trust the government narrative, and at the same time, it's interesting that there's this, I'd say, very large grassroots kind of information sharing network in China, but a lot of information that I'd say that people see as important gets removed very quickly. And so a lot of Chinese people, not just journalists, who want to know what's going on will stay up all night just checking posts and saving things when they go online. Can you talk about how your team does that?
Yeah, so basically the Chinese language team will monitor Weibo, which is like the Twitter, Chinese version of Twitter, or WeChat, which is this really popular instant messaging, but also news sharing platform, and just scour and see who are talking about the coronavirus. Because yes, as you said, the internet is kind of the only place where a lot of Chinese people can say what they want to say. And because of this, the Chinese regime also realizes that they can't get a hold of the narrative, right? So that's why censors are constantly also monitoring the internet and deleting posts that don't have authorized information or that look unsavory for the authorities. So so oftentimes you just have to archive the posts, screenshot them, and then save it in order to kind of preserve the information.
Yeah, which of course makes it difficult as a journalist because, normally in the West, the official channels are taken as the official channels. They're taken as the ones that are most credible. In China, the official channels are what the government's saying, and they have a track record of not being totally honest, if honest at all, on some issues, especially when it risks public image of the regime. But also, a lot of what is passed around falls under the realm of rumor. And so how do we, how do you filter between that? Is it patterns? Is it, how do we filter between rumors and government narrative and what we're hearing from interviews and so on?
Yeah, so I think the pattern thing is key. So sometimes you'll see lots of netizens talking about the same thing, like the hospitals being overwhelmed and turning people away. So even though the posts are being deleted really quickly, the fact that there's so many people saying something similar shows that this is probably not just someone who decided to, ramble on the internet and like make something up. So that's one key issue. And then the other way we kind of try to verify is just try to call people like on the ground. And sometimes it's kind of potentially dangerous for them because you could get arrested or detained if you say something that the Chinese authorities don't like. In fact, in this recent coronavirus outbreak, I think WeChat actually set out a regulation that if you spread rumors, then you can get 3 to 7 years imprisonment if you are charged with this.
Yeah, and so one of the ways the Chinese Communist Party suppresses information when it comes to the, let's say, grassroots journalism that takes place, because there are some pretty influential people on the Chinese internet, is that they punish you if your video or post goes viral. And viral in China is different than viral in the West. Viral in the West, you can get 20,000 views and they say it's viral. In China, that's like what, millions, right?
Probably, yeah. I mean, 1 billion people. With millions who have internet, yeah.
Interesting. So what is our analysis in terms of, of course, we're not really publishing the Chinese Communist Party's numbers on the virus. And that is because generally, through our own research and just the track record of the CCP, including SARS, you name it, their numbers usually aren't accurate. I guess what's our analysis on kind of the inaccuracies in the CCP's narratives?
Mm-hmm. So yes, actually, we've heard from an insider who told us that China's CDC were limiting the number of diagnostic kits that they could give out to hospitals in Wuhan and other areas. So in this way, people, like medical staff at the hospitals, weren't able to diagnose people with the coronavirus. So in this way, the Chinese authorities were basically underreporting cases.
And I know they've also been going around with these, what do you call, like radar-looking thermometer things?
Yeah.
but those don't, from what I've read, those don't really test during the gestation period. They don't test when people are not showing symptoms. And I understand, too, that some people have lighter symptoms than others. Mm-hmm. Is this accurate? Do you think that affects the numbers as well?
Yeah, because as we talked earlier, there's that 2-week period where you could potentially not show symptoms. So, you might not have the fever. So even if you use the temperature monitor, you might, seem normal. So you might not catch the people who actually have the virus.
Interesting. And so just again, everyone, those of you tuning in, this is the China Report. I'm Joshua Phillip. This is Annie Wu. She's the China news editor at the Epoch Times, and we're talking about how information from hospitals in China are going against the narratives of the Chinese Communist Party when it comes to the coronavirus. And so, Annie, you were telling us about the interviews your reporting team has been doing with people on the ground. What have we been hearing in terms of the general situation? Are people panicked? Do they feel that things are being done properly? Are the streets full? Are the streets empty? What's the situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a lot of our reporters have talked to people in Wuhan, and because they're basically under like an unofficial quarantine, right? People are no longer have access to public transportation, so most people are just staying at home, just kind of sitting it out. And we hear that a lot of people are actually very worried, and they don't really trust what the Chinese authorities are saying. So, they've only realized now that the illness is more serious, so they try to avoid going out to public places. And so, the streets are probably mostly empty except for people who are trying to get into hospitals. There were some videos earlier last week that showed a lot of people lining up on the queue trying to get help. But now I think because the city of Wuhan is under quarantine, people are not really going outside. And
so under quarantine, basic services we can assume are shut down. Is this accurate? Said no transportation. What else is shut down? Do we know?
The schools are also closed. The China already had like a Chinese New Year holiday that usually goes for 2 weeks, but the authorities extended the holiday by a few days in order to prevent people from gathering in large crowds. So, yeah, schools are still closed. A lot of sightseeing locations around the country are actually also closed. So, yeah, probably very quiet all around.
Interesting. Yeah. And have we heard of the disease spreading to other provinces?
Oh, yeah. So now it's spread to every province and region in the country. So 30-something odd provinces and regions like Tibet, Xinjiang have
So
also
even
cases.
Tibet, because I remember hearing early on that Tibet was not affected.
Yeah, I think it was yesterday that they've confirmed one case. So,
interesting. And so I think this ties into the significance of Wuhan. Maybe for those who don't know, you can talk about what Wuhan is to China.
Yeah, so it's basically the city's biggest transportation hub. So a lot of flights.
So the country's biggest transportation hub.
Yeah, and a lot of railway connections, bus connections. So like during that Lunar New Year period, when a lot of people go back home to their hometowns, they usually transit through Wuhan. A lot of people do. So this was why experts was worried that during this holiday, the disease could spread further because everyone's going home, traveling around the country, potentially spreading it further.
Yeah. And so for those who don't know, too, Wuhan is where the Chinese Communist Party has all of its main gatherings. It's where it's kind of like the place where technology spreads from throughout China. It's seen as the place where things are done and then goes to the rest of China because it has this maybe symbolic but also practical nature of being the transportation hub of the country. Everything runs through it. It's the gateway between the north and the south. What about supplies? I mean, we hear people we know the city's shut down. We know that people are locked in their homes. They're afraid to go out. How are they getting food? Are they bringing supplies in for them? Have we heard anything about this yet?
Yeah, so we've heard some stories of nearby provinces blocking roads that go to Wuhan because people are freaked out that Wuhan residents can spread the disease. So in some cases, people just put physical barricades on the roads to prevent cars or people from entering their village or their county. And I think we've heard that this has kind of hindered, transportation. And actually, hospitals are already very undersupply for medical gear and protection. A lot of hospitals actually went on their social media and said, can we get donations from people because we don't have enough supplies.
Well, and that ties into something interesting because one of the main things they need when dealing with a virus outbreak like this are these protective suits. And those suits are normally disposable suits because obviously you're treating people who have a contagious disease, and if they cough on you or sneeze on you, then that's on you, and that's what's going to transmit a disease like this coronavirus specifically, but in general I think too.
Yeah.
And if they can't change them, they can't disinfect them, the suits themselves become basically carriers of them. Is this accurate?
Yeah, I think that's why the doctors were saying, can you get new equipment for us? And we spoke to one doctor who said, because we ran out of supplies, we had to reuse the disposable suit, and this is actually very dangerous. So they were like, please help us. We don't know how to get the supplies.
Well, and I think this brings up some interesting points about, one, I would say people being willing to speak out. And because, we see these doctors even going on social media and saying, well, I don't care anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't care if they punish me. This is serious and we need help. And you don't normally see that in China except under really, really rare occasions. And it's usually international news when it does happen. But we're seeing this, it seems, pretty often. And two, officials even criticizing each other. There seems to be infighting. But maybe we'll start with kind of the significance of people speaking out. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think that could speak to the desperation that people have. Because, yes, people are generally afraid of saying something that criticizes the authorities because they know that they can be taken away by police. But the crisis in Wuhan is so bad that doctors say they don't fear that anymore. They just need to let people know what's going on and why they really need help.
And in terms of the infighting, these politicians in China actually criticizing their superiors and things like this. Normally, under the Communist Party culture, you have to do self-criticisms and group criticisms and things like that. But criticizing a superior when in public, especially in the Communist Party tier system, that'll get you killed, usually. So tell us about what's been going on with this.
Yeah, there was something really unusual. So I think it was on last week. CCTV is the state broadcaster, right? A propaganda channel, basically. And so they allowed the Wuhan mayor to go on air and be interviewed by a journalist, a reporter. And basically, during that interview, he started saying, well, I'm sorry for, mismanaging this crisis, but my higher-ups, like the central government, wouldn't allow me to disclose information before they give me the approval. So he was basically saying, it's not really my fault. Like, I didn't have the means to do what I wanted to. He was basically kind of shifting the blame to the central government, which is really interesting.
And this brings up a couple questions. One, if this was broadcast on CCTV, did they cut the feed?
Yeah, I think one of our editors on the Chinese side saw that they soon after ended the interview because I think they didn't quite anticipate that answer.
And here's why it's significant from the China reporting standpoint. If they cut the feed, it means that it was probably just him speaking out of line and they cut him off. If they did not cut the feed, then it means that it could relate to more of an internal factional battle, that maybe an internal faction is allowing that to broadcast to criticize another faction who they're trying to put the blame on. Is this usually accurate in your analysis?
Yeah, that's probably true. Although I think there's probably a bit of that here too, because another high official, so the party boss of Wuhan, so this is the guy who would be the top in terms of the officials in charge of Wuhan. He's the party secretary. He also, during a press conference, said that the central government didn't allow me to give out the diagnostic tests. So we didn't have the capability to test for the coronavirus until much later. So I think this may be a pattern, suggesting that there's some kind of strife in which they don't want the blame to go on themselves, so they're trying to...
Yeah, and so it's complicated then because, there are two tiers of analysis. One is the two main factions in China. One is that under Xi Jinping, the current leader, and the other being under Jiang Zemin, who was 2 leaders ago. There was Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, then Xi Jinping. And there's been a lot of infighting between these two factions. And sometimes you see criticism against Xi Jinping, but not against the party itself. A lot of times things like that come from the Jiang faction. Whereas criticisms against the regime itself, the foundational system of the Communist Party power structure, is typically from the actual dissidents who oppose the regime overall, rather than just a faction. But maybe you could explain to us this factional battle, how this thing actually works in China, because it's not something we hear about often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the party has different alliances. Not everyone will agree to this leader being, in control of things. There will be another faction that is in control of another segment of the regime, maybe like the security sector. And they will often do things to undermine the other faction. So there's a lot of party struggle within. And so when Xi Jinping came to power in 2012, basically he started to punish all the guys who didn't like him in the Jiang faction.
Anti-corruption campaign.
Right.
Actually, most of them are corrupt anyway. So
yes, a lot of them did embezzle a lot of money and things like that. Yeah. Yeah, so it's been more than 7 years now, right? So he's offed a lot of these Jiang faction officials. And most analysts will say that she has basically control of the party, but sometimes there's these cracks that you see in the way information is delivered, or this.
And so now with this Wuhan crisis and people coming out and criticizing their superiors, do you think this is a factional thing, or do you think this is them trying to shift blame away from themselves?
I have a feeling it's both, because there are still people who are not loyal to Xi Jinping, and who probably saw that the way he responded to the crisis maybe wasn't the best. So there will be people who do not like him and his leadership. But I also think since the crisis has gone out of hand, officials don't want the blame on themselves. They want to shift it to, the guy above them, So, I think it's a bit both.
And of course, this whole crisis came at a inconvenient time for these Chinese Communist Party leaders. They had the elections in Taiwan, which had a landslide victory against the party in favor of the Chinese Communist Party. And so the Chinese Communist Party lost a lot of legitimacy in Taiwan. It happens right during these very large-scale protests in Hong Kong, opposing the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. And it also happens right when this U.S.-China trade deal is going through. And so they had every reason from an internal stance to try to suppress things that make the party look bad, right?
Yeah.
But I think we should talk about how has this virus been affecting these issues? And I think mainly, how has it been affecting what we see in Hong Kong?
Yeah, it's interesting in Hong Kong because people have long been dissatisfied with the government there because they seem to be just a puppet of Beijing. And this time with the coronavirus, a lot of people are saying the same thing. Like the Hong Kong government, they say is not responding enough to the crisis. And a lot of them have been calling for the government to close off all the borders to the mainland to prevent people from coming in and potentially spreading the virus to Hong Kong. And the government so far has stopped railways and I think flights from China, but not like a full border closing. So people are still like upset.
Now, I understand that your reporting team has been interviewing health experts as well in the West and other places about how fatal this is, the transmission rate, just to get general information about this disease, because honestly, the Chinese Communist Party is not cooperating with the CDC or external researchers. And so I don't know if we want to get into it. We don't know where the virus came from still. We don't know where it came from. They say it came from the seafood market. There's other research and evidence suggesting it came from this level 4 virus, deadly virus research facility 20 miles away from that market. And of course, the Chinese Communist Party shut down that market. And so there's no possible way they can go in, foreign investigators can go in now and verify any of their claims. And so it's hard to say where it came from. It's hard to trust anything the CCP says. And a lot of Western analysts have been looking at numbers, looking at data, and coming to very different conclusions than what the Chinese Communist Party is saying. So I know you've spoken to some of these health experts. What are some of their findings?
So I can't take credit. It's usually my reporters who contact the experts.
Of course, yeah.
But yes, so there's been a group of researchers in the UK and also in Hong Kong who ran statistical models based on the number of international cases that were reported. And basically, they project that the actual number of infections in Wuhan and broadly in China is probably much higher than what the authorities are reporting, just based on their analysis. So, it's pretty obvious that the Chinese regime is not being forthcoming with their information on the cases and deaths. And then the other thing that they noticed was that there's a scientific term called the reproduction number, and this is the number of people in an uninfected population that could potentially be infected upon someone getting the virus. And they analyzed that this number was higher than the number for SARS. So they project that this virus is likely to spread further than the 2002-2003 outbreak.
And of course, SARS also had a large cover-up accompanying it. The Chinese Communist Party also covered up the numbers and the scale of it. Interesting. So what would we say the transmission rate is for this, according to these doctors? Do we have a number for that?
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but they did say it was higher than the SARS.
Yeah.
And the important point also about the incubation period, during SARS, it was not contagious during that time, but with this coronavirus, it is. So it's probably, more spreading more widely. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So a few numbers have come out. I think the Chinese Communist Party number was 1.8 or something like that, which means that, every person who catches it gives it to 1.8 roughly. But the Western numbers keep changing. I've seen over 3. I think 3.8 or something very high like that.
So.
And I know that some others rolled it back to around 2.5. And so the data's all over the place, just being honest, because...
I think it's also because they're getting information from China. And if China's data is not accurate, then it kind of affects their models too. So, yeah, I think it's hard for researchers as well to really make accurate conclusions.
And is there any estimate yet on how fatal the disease is?
There's no conclusive result so far because, like we said, it is still like a new virus, and it's they say it mutates quickly also. So, like, they can do the current research, but then things keep changing, and so they don't have like a final say on how threatening it is.
The mutation part's pretty serious. I mean, here's one of the issues that we have, and everyone has. So there's very little official data, and the official data that there is not trustworthy, and Western researchers aren't able to get in and do really their own research. Yeah. And then there's also reports saying that the virus mutates with every generation. And so when it spreads from one group of people to the next, it's almost like a different virus in a lot of ways. And so they can't vaccinate it. They can't vaccinate against it. They can't create cures for it. And it also makes it more difficult to study from that stance also.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think we should step back also and talk about the significance of the Chinese Communist Party shutting down Wuhan. Because, again, this took place at a really serious time for the Chinese Communist Party. This took place, again, right during this right after the Taiwan elections, landslide victory against the interests of the CCP, large-scale protests against the authority of the CCP in Hong Kong, and this U.S.-China trade deal, China's finances getting hit hard with sanctions and tariffs and these types of things. And shutting down a city and locking things down, such a major city as Wuhan, and locking things down in the way they have, really could impact the internal GDP and market and internal stability, which is a huge thing for the CCP. So what is the significance of them shutting down Wuhan?
Well, yeah, I think they had to take such drastic measures because they realized they couldn't contain the outbreak anymore. And so, yeah, to the outside world, it seemed serious once that lockdown happened. And so I think basically they've been trying to do like PR control since then, right? Like they're trying to like make people calm down and say, okay, it's not as bad as it is, but the cases just like keep growing, right? We see cases in, I think, 14 countries now. So, yeah, and then in terms of the economic impact, I think for sure if you have, flights down, railways down, and people are just staying at home, this is definitely going to happen.
And avoiding crowded areas like marketplaces and things like that, if they can. In terms of the situation in other parts of China, we understand that in Wuhan people are pretty worried, but what about the rest of China?
Yeah, I saw videos this morning on Twitter from Beijing, like the streets are also very quiet. So I think overall people are kind of nervous that this disease could spread to them. And so, I mean, the authorities themselves are still reporting cases every day. So they know that this is actually a serious outbreak.
And how effective has the shutdown been? We, of course, know that cases are being reported elsewhere. One of the reasons the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, is not declaring this a pandemic, a global pandemic, is because they believe the Chinese Communist Party is containing it or moving towards containing it. Do you think it is containing it based on what you've seen, your team has seen?
So yeah, one of my reporters contacted a researcher in Taiwan, and he said to us that basically the quarantine probably is not that effective because the disease is already spread to other parts of the country. And so like the period in which you could have prevented the disease from spreading was basically past. And so will a quarantine really work to prevent the virus from spreading? I think we know for a fact that it's not the case because we see more cases.
And for those of us who missed our interview yesterday with Dr. Dana Cheng, who's the senior editor of China News for Epoch Times, she explained an interesting timeline that, as Annie mentioned, rumors of the virus began spreading around, November. First case, December 1st, first reporting on it, December 8th. And people who started reporting on it in December were being arrested by Chinese authorities. The Chinese Communist Party came out and said, in other words, it was arresting people. It knew that something was taking place. It was suppressing information on spreading online about this. And then, of course, came out much later after people had already left Wuhan to travel for the Chinese New Year, and there are about 3 billion travels a year in China.
During that period,
which is, what's the global population? 7 billion people.
Yeah.
3 billion.
It's a lot of trips.
And that's not people, that's trips, of course. But it's pretty big. Something around in the areas of 30 million people traveling around in Wuhan during that time.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so, this is serious. And then also, people spreading, going to large gatherings. They had this huge banquet feast, record-breaking potluck in Wuhan during this time. Maybe the authorities did it to try to put on a show that look how not afraid we are.Maybe they did it unknowingly. Yeah. But 40,000 families, more than 100,000 people showed up, and in other words, the authorities knew something was taking place, did not warn people about it, told people, arrested people who talked about it, and didn't do anything about it until really it had spread to a pretty serious level. And before they locked down the city, there were reports that 5 million people left Wuhan.
Right, correct.
And so how effective is a lockdown if 5 million people leave right before it locks down?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess this brings us to the kind of a last point is when we get to the idea of cover-up. Now, in the West, cover-up has a stigma attached to it, but in China, this is a regular occurrence. And so,
unfortunately,
yeah. So why don't you tell us about the cover-up the CCP has been doing on this, on the coronavirus?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically, before when we were talking about the diagnostic kits, that's like underreporting the number of cases. It's basically part of the culture of the Communist Party to want to make things appear fine, right? Like things are stable. We don't want the population to get nervous and potentially rise up and protest, right? So a lot of the narratives that they push out are to kind of maintain the order and then like make sure people don't start protesting the authorities, right? So a lot of the data is not forthcoming. If you look at the numbers that they report, you can see that they reported a death like 24 hours after it took place. And this is, just information that they're releasing. So, there's definitely a lot of contradictory numbers that we've seen as well, like between different provinces and then the national numbers, they don't match up.
Yeah, well, and the provincial issue is important to note because this goes way back into the Chinese Communist Party, even back to the time when the Communist Party was taking over, such as, the Great Leap Forward and these types of things, where local government officials want to save face. They want to look good to their superiors, and they don't want to be punished. And so they'll alter numbers as they pass them up to higher authorities. And sometimes even when they're asked to carry out certain research, they end up not doing it and then make up numbers according to kind of the general agreed upon percentage that they've been kind of fed with the narrative. Is this accurate, first off? And if so, how have we seen this taking place?
So we don't know exactly the mechanism that works in terms of their reporting, but there was a researcher who told us that within the bureaucracy of the Communist Party, it is general protocol for local government to first report to the county, then the province, then the central government. So there is space there for, potential misreporting of data.
Okay, great. And I guess, as I said last question, but let's get one more. Because, we've of course talked about how the Chinese Communist Party censors the internet, tries to prevent information from getting out on the grassroots level. And at the same time, a lot of people have been posting videos of the streets in Beijing, have been going online and talking about what's happening. A lot of times the more viral ones get taken offline. And then the Chinese Communist Party comes out and gives, in addition to its existing warnings about people spreading online rumors, as it likes to call it, gave another even harsher reminder. So telling people they risk, 3 years to 7 years in prison if they spread rumors online. With this in place, how does the Chinese internet look? Are people coming out and talking about it still? Are they defying the Communist Party, or are they falling in line with it?
People are still posting on social media, yeah. I think this is actually what happens on a day-to-day basis in China, where people feel the need to let the world know what's really going on, and they're still risking the potential loss of freedom for themselves, but they want the truth to be out there because they don't know, they don't have another outlet. So even though the censors might catch it and knock on their doors, they're gonna do it because it's the only way they know how.
Great. Well, Annie, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you.
Again, everyone, this is Annie Wu, China editor at the Epoch Times. I'm Joshua Phillip, senior investigative reporter at the Epoch Times. Thanks for tuning in to the China Report, and tune in again tomorrow. 10 a.m. we're going to have Chris Chappell of China Uncensored on. Be sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell you see when our videos go online. We really need your support. Help us grow. Tell your friends about it. That said, we'll see you next time.